and standard of proof applicable to impeachment proceedings, thus violating Article 145. For example, although the court in the Robert Alive as an Attorney General case, which is reported in 2017, 6090, nullified Section 132 of the Penal Code. The court nullified Section 132 of the Penal Code. 5 years before the Deputy President's election to office, Ground 8 of the impeachment motion alleged that the Deputy President had violated that nullified law, warranting his removal from office. By impeaching the Deputy President on the basis of a section that had been nullified by this court, what he know was a National Assembly sending to the public who had elected the Deputy President with over 71 million votes. This is demonstrative of the casualness of the National Assembly in performing a very important duty imposed by the Constitution of impeachment. My Lord, you find that authority, paragraph 62, alike case, pages 62 to 63. And although Article 145(1)(b) only applies where there are serious reasons for believing that the Deputy President has committed a crime, in Ground 8, the National Assembly resolved to impeach the Deputy President for, among others, violations of a nullified law. The National Assembly then informed the Speaker of the Senate of that resolution, finding that the charge of violating a repealed law had been substantiated. My Lords, Your Leadership, the Senate voted on that impeachment charge on the basis of a repealed section. And you find that in Exhibit RG3, Volume 6, pages 745 to 747. And my Lord, although Article 10 on accountability and the alike case opened all holders of public offices to searching public scrutiny, in Ground 9, the National Assembly approved the charge that the Deputy President had grossly misconducted himself by publicly criticizing a public security agent. My Lord, what offense was the National Assembly stating here? What article of the Constitution was the National Assembly stating had been violated by the first petitioner criticizing the NIS director? My Lord, you will see from Article 239, and in fact the NIS Act, that the NIS, under the Constitution, 239, sub-article 5, is supposed to be under civilian oversight authority. And the Act itself clearly recognizes that, which is why you will find in the NIS Act, it is 206 of the laws of Kenya, you will find in Part 3, Civilian Authorities, the heading, Effective Surveillance Authority. They then say that the Cabinet Secretary will be the civilian authority oversight. The Cabinet Secretary is part of the executive. That is not civilian oversight. Simply put, this National Intelligence Act has never complied with the provisions of the Constitution. Had they operationalized that and set up a civilian oversight authority, it is that civilian oversight authority that would take up these issues. But criticism, despite the freedom of thought and expression in our Constitution, the first petitioner was still convicted for criticizing the NIS director. So, my Lord, Your Leadership, what you are submitting here is that there was absolutely no attempt by the National Assembly, by the Senate, to address their minds to the high standard of gross violation of the Constitution. My Lord, Ground 5 accused the Deputy President of grossly violating Article 3(1) and 148(5)(d) of the Constitution and of failing to uphold his oath of office and allegiance. There were no details provided. Instead, Ground 5 simply referenced Ground 1, 2, 3, and 4. This unfair and confusing charge was such that even though the Senate cleared the Deputy President of Ground 2 and 3, it still voted to impeach him based on Ground 5. There was no attempt to explain, even vaguely, how the Deputy President had violated his oath of office. Ground 6 equally alleged that there were serious reasons to believe that Rigathi Gachagua had committed crimes under Section 13(1)(a) and 62 of the National Cohesion and Integration Act. As I mentioned, my Lord, and I now put this on record, why wasn't he taken first to the National Cohesion for prosecution before invoking the last resort remedy of impeachment? Because the Deputy President filed a response to the motion before the National Assembly on 8 October 2024 and was granted 2 hours to orally present his rebuttal on the floor of the National Assembly from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. In the presentation, the petitioner made a cogent, irrefutable, factual, and legal response to each of the 11 grounds cited in the impeachment motion. Lord, you see that in Exhibit RG2, Volume 2, pages 211 to 240. For instance, concerning the claim in Ground 8 that the Deputy President had acquired property and wealth estimated at 5.2 billion Kenya shillings from proceeds of corruption and money laundering, the Deputy President explained that no valuation had been done So where the National Assembly, Honorable Mwengi Mutusi, got 5.2 billion is anybody's guess. If you want to charge somebody, you present evidence that this is the value of this property. Further, from his brother's will, the bulk of those properties to which the sum of 5.2 billion was erroneously and maliciously attached belonged to his late brother, the late Honorable James Derito Gachagua. May his soul rest in eternal peace. Some, like the Olive Garden Hotel, Vipingo Beach Resort, Queen's Gate Serviced Apartment, he did not even own. And yet, this was what he was impeached on. But we are falsely attributed to him. He produced ownership document showing otherwise, and you will find that, my lord, in RG2, volume 2, pages 211 to 214. Lords, although the mover of the motion listed that the two companies associating them with the petitioner, first petitioner, alleging that they had been used to massively launder money and conceal proceeds of crime, of corruption, and benefit from influence peddling, there was not a scintilla of evidence to support or prove those allegations. No evidence showed any impropriety, and you will find that in RG2, volume 2, pages 214 to 218. The Speaker of the National Assembly, again, a good professional colleague who I respect, did not direct the members to the threshold test, the appropriate standard. Hence, the resolution was passed in proceedings conducted as a vote of no confidence, rather than a critical step in impeachment proceedings to alter the sovereign will of the people. And you will find that as message of the Senate, number 025 of 2024, approval of special motion, RG3, volume 6, 745 to 745. Equally, the National Assembly's decision of 8 October 2024 was invalid on the grounds that, one, the impeachment motion was replete with the general unsupported allegations, hearsay, and outright lies, and lacked particularization and specificity required by Article 145(1) of the Constitution of Kenya and Standing Order 64(1)A of the Standing Orders of the National Assembly. 2, members of Parliament debated and voted on the motions on grounds other than those set out in the motion. The impeachment was converted into a vicarious assault on family rather than investigation of constitutional violations by a public servant. Members of Parliament, let me skip that and go through the next one. The entire impeachment process was designed to avoid and be ring-fenced from scrutiny and accountability, pushed through with uncharacteristic speed with the intention of ramming the process through before it could be audited for constitutional compliance. The National Assembly prosecuted proceedings on the basis that the petitioner offended the president rather than the Constitution. And what the 2010 Constitution provides is violation of the Constitution. In other words, the president must take time and choose his deputy. And Lord, I don't need to take time to go through what the country was put through between His Excellency Daniel Toroitich Arap Moi and his Vice President George Saitoti.